He had private jets, mansions, and a father worth billions. But he was failing at life. Everyone had given up on him, his teachers, his classmates, even his own father. Until one day, a woman mopping floors in the corner of his school said 7 words that shattered everything he thought he knew. He thought she was nobody. He had no idea she was about to save his life. This is the true story of how the person everyone ignored became the only one who mattered. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll never look at people the same way again. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a boy named Daniel. Daniel lived in London, in one of those houses you see in magazines. The kind with iron gates, marble floors, and rooms so big your voice echoes when you talk. His father, Richard, owned a pharmaceutical empire. Pills, medicines, hospitals, you name it. The family name was on buildings across the city. Daniel had everything a 17-year-old could want. Designer sneakers that cost more than most people's rent. A bedroom bigger than some apartments. Holidays in Dubai and Paris. He never flew commercial, always private jets with leather seats and flight attendants who knew his name. But here's the thing about having everything. Sometimes it means you have nothing at all. At school, one of those fancy private academies in central London where the hallways smell like old money and furniture polish, Daniel was known for 3 things: his expensive clothes, his terrible grades, and his even worse attitude. He failed every test. Every single one. Not because he couldn't learn, but because he never tried. Why would he? Teachers passed him anyway, too afraid to fail the son of Richard Hayes. The school needed his father's donations more than they needed standards. Daniel knew this, and he used it. When a teacher once tried to talk to him about his failing marks, Daniel leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said something that spread through the school like wildfire. "My father could buy this entire building tomorrow. What's your grade going to do for me that his money can't?" The teacher went silent. Everyone did. Nobody wanted to challenge the boy whose last name paid for the new science wing. But at home, things were different. His father wasn't the type to smile or hug or ask about your day. Richard Hayes was steel. He built his empire from nothing, and he had no patience for weakness, especially not in his own son. One night, after another call from the school, Richard sat Daniel down in his office. The room was all dark wood and leather, cold and formal. "You're an embarrassment," his father said, not even looking up from his papers. "If you worked for me, I'd fire you on the spot." Daniel crossed his arms. "Good thing I'm your son then, not your employee." Richard finally looked at him. His eyes were hard, empty. "The world doesn't care if you're my son. Either you become somebody, or you'll just be another rich kid with a famous name and nothing inside. And I won't carry you forever." The words hit like a slap. But Daniel didn't respond. He just walked out. The next morning, Daniel pulled into the school parking lot in his black Range Rover, a birthday gift he didn't even remember asking for. He walked through the main entrance like he owned the place, past lockers and classrooms, past students who stared with either envy or disgust, and past a woman mopping the floor near the side door. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with deep brown skin and kind eyes. Her uniform was worn but clean. She moved slowly, carefully, like the work mattered. Like she mattered. But Daniel didn't see her. To him, she was invisible. Just part of the background. Just the cleaner. He had no idea she was about to change his entire life. Days went by. More tests. More failures. And then his father did something Daniel never expected. He cut him off. No more credit cards. No more car. No more cash in his wallet. Richard even made him take the bus to school, crammed in with everyone else, smelling someone's breakfast sandwich and listening to bad music through broken speakers. Daniel felt humiliated, angry, lost. One cold morning, as he walked through the school's back hallway trying to avoid being seen, he passed the cleaning woman again. This time, she was whispering something under her breath while wiping down a window. Daniel stopped. "What did you just say?" he asked. She looked up at him, calm and unafraid. "Nothing you're ready to understand yet, son." He laughed, but It wasn't a real laugh. It was uncomfortable. Try me. She tilted her head. The only real wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. Daniel frowned. That's Socrates. Yes, it is. She went back to cleaning. Why would a cleaner be quoting ancient philosophy? She paused, then looked him right in the eyes. Why would a boy with the whole world at his feet fail every test he takes? That stung.
Badly.
She picked up her bucket and walked away, leaving Daniel standing there in the empty hallway, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time.
Shame.
Real shame. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her words, about the way she looked at him, not with judgment but with something else. Like she saw through all the money and clothes and attitude, straight into the hollow space inside him. And for the first time in his life, Daniel wondered if maybe, just maybe, he didn't actually know anything at all. The next day, Daniel went looking for her. He found her in the East Wing, scrubbing graffiti off a bathroom wall.
She didn't look surprised to see him.
"You're back," she said simply.
Yeah.
He shifted his weight, hands in his pockets. "You used to be a teacher, didn't you?" She stopped scrubbing and stood up slowly. "What makes you think that?" Nobody quotes philosophy while cleaning toilets. Not unless they've done something else before. A small smile crossed her face. Smart boy. "So? Were you?" She nodded. "I was. A long time ago." "Where?" "University of Manchester. I taught English literature and philosophy for 12 years. Daniel's eyes widened. "Then why are you here? Why are you doing this?" Her expression changed, just slightly. Sadness flickered across her face. Life doesn't always go the way you plan. Sometimes you lose everything, and you have to start over with whatever's left. "What happened?" She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I reported something I shouldn't have. Someone powerful was cheating, stealing other people's work, and calling it their own. I spoke up. They buried me for it. Took my job, my reputation, everything. And then my husband died in an accident 6 months later." Daniel didn't know what to say. He just stood there, feeling small. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "Don't be sorry," she said. "Be better. That's what matters." He looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. "What's your name?" "Grace. Grace Okafor." "Grace," he repeated. "Can you teach me?" She studied his face. "Why?" "Because I'm failing everything. Because my father's right. I am an embarrassment. Because I don't want to be empty anymore." His voice cracked. "Please." Grace crossed her arms. "If I agree, there's one rule. You leave your name at the door. You stop being Richard Hayes' son and start being Daniel, just Daniel. A student. Nothing more, nothing less. Deal. And one more thing. This won't be easy. I won't go easy on you because of who your father is. I'll push you harder than anyone ever has." "Good," Daniel said. "I need that." The next morning, before the sun came up, Daniel met Grace in an unused classroom at the back of the school. She had a stack of books, a notebook, and a thermos of tea. "We start with the basics," she said. "Not math or science. We start with understanding. With reading, real reading. The kind that changes how you see the world." She handed him a book. To Kill a Mockingbird. "You've probably been assigned it before." "Yeah, I never read it." "I know. This time, you will. And you'll tell me what it makes you feel." "Feel?" Daniel looked confused. "Yes, feel. Reading isn't just about words on a page. It's about what those words do to you inside. That's where real learning begins." For the next hour, they read together. Grace asked him questions that made his brain hurt. Not because they were hard, but because nobody had ever asked him to think like this before. "Why do you think Scout's father defends Tom Robinson, even though he knows it might destroy his reputation?" Daniel thought hard. Because it's right? And because doing the right thing matters more than being popular? Grace smiled. "Now you're learning." Days turned into weeks. Every morning before school, every evening after Grace finished her cleaning shift, they met. Daniel read books he'd never heard of. James Baldwin, Chinua Achebe, Maya Angelou, George Orwell. And he started writing. Not essays for grades, but real thoughts. About his father. About feeling empty. About being angry all the time without knowing why. Grace read every word. She corrected him with red pen, harsh but fair. This sentence is pretty, but meaningless. Rewrite it with truth. You're hiding behind fancy words. Say what you actually mean. It was brutal, but it worked. Something was changing inside Daniel. The books weren't just stories anymore. They were mirrors. They showed him things about himself, about the world, that he'd never seen before. One afternoon, two boys from his year walked past the classroom where Daniel was studying. One of them, a rugby player named Connor, laughed loudly. "Look at Hayes," he said to his friend, writing love notes to the cleaning lady. Daniel's jaw clenched. He started to stand up, ready to fight. But Grace put her hand on his shoulder. "Don't," she said quietly. "You don't measure the ocean with a teaspoon." Daniel looked at her, confused. "They're small," she explained. "Their cruelty is small. Don't shrink yourself to their level." He sat back down. The anger melted into something else. Understanding. Strength. That night, Daniel got a text from his father. "School updated your records. Still failing. One last chance. Fix this or you're done. No money. No support. Nothing." Daniel read the message 3 times. Then he turned off his phone, opened his notebook, and kept writing. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of failing. He was afraid of stopping. Word started to spread. Students noticed Daniel was different. He showed up to class now, asked questions, turned in homework. Not just any homework, but essays that made teachers pause and read twice. In history class, he raised his hand. "Why does our textbook spend 3 pages on the kings and queens, but only 2 paragraphs on colonialism and slavery?" The teacher blinked. "Excuse me? I'm just asking. Seems like we're skipping the parts that actually shaped the world we live in now." Silence. Then a few students nodded. The teacher stammered through a response, but everyone knew Daniel was right. At lunch, instead of sitting alone with his expensive food and his phone, Daniel started noticing people. The girl who worked 2 jobs after school. The boy who wore the same hoodie every day because it was all he had. The teacher who spent her lunch break helping students for free. Once you start seeing people, you can't stop. And Daniel couldn't unsee what had been invisible to him his whole life. But not everyone was happy about his transformation. His father certainly wasn't. One Saturday morning, Richard showed up at the house where Daniel was staying with his aunt after being kicked out. He walked in without knocking, suit perfect, face cold. "We need to talk." Daniel looked up from his book. "About what?"
About this.
Richard threw down a folder. Inside were Daniel's new grades. B's and B pluses. Teacher comments like, "Remarkable improvement," and "finally engaged." "This is good," Daniel said, confused. "This is embarrassing," Richard snapped. "Do you know what people are saying? That my son is getting help from the cleaning staff. Do you have any idea how that makes us look?" Daniel stood up. "Grace isn't just cleaning staff. She was a university professor."
Was.
Past tense. Now she mops floors. And you're associating with her like she's your mentor. "She's my mentor," Daniel said, voice rising. "She's taught me more in 3 months than 12 years of private school ever did." Richard stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "You stop seeing her. Immediately. Or I will make sure she loses this job too." Daniel felt his blood go cold. "You wouldn't. Try me. I've made 1 call and she's gone. Is that what you want?" "You're evil," Daniel whispered. "I'm practical. And you will be too, or you'll have nothing. Choose." Richard left. Daniel stood there shaking, tears of rage streaming down his face. The next Monday, Grace wasn't at school. Daniel searched everywhere. The East Wing, the bathrooms, the library. Her cleaning cart was gone. Her coat wasn't on the hook by the staff room. He ran to the administration office. "Where's Grace?" "Grace Okafor, the cleaner?" The secretary barely looked up. "She's been let go. Budget cuts." "That's a lie." "Excuse me? My father had her fired, didn't he?" The secretary's face said everything. Daniel walked out in a daze. Students moved around him like water around a stone. Everything felt unreal, wrong. That afternoon, he sat in the unused classroom where they used to meet. On the desk was a note, in Grace's handwriting. Daniel, they can take away my job, but they can't take away what you've learned. Keep reading. Keep thinking. Keep becoming. You don't need me anymore. You have yourself. That's enough.
Gee.
He read it 10 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. On the wall, there was a poster about the end-of-year speech contest. Topic: what it means to win in life. Daniel stared at it for a long time. Then he went home, opened his notebook, and started writing. Not for a grade. Not for his father. For Grace. For truth. He wrote all night. The night of the speech contest arrived. The school auditorium was packed. Parents in expensive coats. Students in their best clothes. University recruiters with notepads and judgmental eyes. Daniel stood backstage, wearing a simple white shirt and dark trousers. No designer labels. No flashy watch. Just him and the words he'd written. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. A teacher called his name. Daniel Hayes, you're up. He walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, blinding. He couldn't see faces, just shadows. He stepped up to the microphone, took a breath, and began. My name is Daniel Hayes. Most of you know me as the kid who had everything and did nothing with it. The one who failed every test, mocked every teacher, and acted like the world owed him something just because of his last name. The room was silent. You'd be right. That was me. I was empty, angry,
Lost.
I had money, I had privilege, but I had no idea who I was. He paused, gathering courage. Then someone saw me.
Really saw me.
Not a cleaner, though that was her job. A teacher. A brilliant woman who lost everything because she told the truth when everyone else stayed quiet. His voice grew stronger. Her name is Grace Okafor. She taught me how to read, not just words, but meaning. She taught me how to think, how to question, how to see people I'd looked past my entire life. She didn't do it for money or credit or recognition. She did it because that's who she is. Someone in the audience sniffled. And this school fired her.
Why?
Because parents complained. Because someone like me learning from someone like her didn't fit the image. Because the system protects those at the top and punishes those at the bottom. His voice cracked, but he kept going. So, what does it mean to win in life? It doesn't mean having money. It doesn't mean having power or a famous name or a big house. It means becoming someone worth being. It means seeing the people everyone else ignores. It means standing up even when it costs you everything. Tears were streaming down his face now. Grace, if you're out there, I hope you know. You didn't just teach me English or philosophy.
You taught me how to be human.
And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be half the person you are. He stepped back from the microphone. For a moment, nothing. Just silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. And then the entire auditorium was on its feet, applauding, crying, roaring with emotion. Daniel looked out into the crowd, and there, in the back row, he saw her.
Grace.
She'd come back, just to see him. She was crying too. But she was smiling. And Daniel knew, in that moment, he'd finally won something real. The video went everywhere. Students posted it online. Then parents shared it. Then news websites picked it up. Billionaire's son credits fired cleaner for saving his life. Within a week, Grace had interview requests from 3 universities. Within a month, she had a teaching position at a community college in North London. Daniel finished school with honors. Real honors, earned through actual work. He got offers from Oxford and Cambridge, but he turned them down. Instead, he chose a small university focused on education and social justice. When reporters asked why, he said, "Because I want to teach the way Grace taught me. I want to build places where everyone gets seen." But the story doesn't end there. 6 months later, Daniel knocked on the door of a small flat in Brixton. Grace answered, wearing a cardigan and glasses, papers in her hand. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" He held out an envelope. "I need to show you something." Inside was a business proposal. A plan to open a learning center in one of London's poorest neighborhoods. Free tutoring, mentorship, real teaching for kids who'd been written off by the system. "I want to call it the Grace Okafor Learning Center," Daniel said. "But only if you'll help me run it." Grace's hands were shaking as she read. "Daniel, this is beautiful. But why?" "Because you gave me everything when I had nothing that mattered. Now I want to do the same for others." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Only if we do this together." "Always." They opened the center 9 months later. It wasn't fancy, just a renovated community hall with books, computers, and chairs that didn't match. But it was warm. It was safe. And it was real.
Kids came.
Slowly at first, then in waves. Kids who'd been told they weren't smart enough. Kids who'd been invisible their whole lives. Grace taught like she was born to do it. And Daniel learned that teaching was just another form of seeing people. One evening, a 12-year-old girl handed Grace a notebook. "Miss, I wrote something. Will you read it?" Grace read the poem inside, about feeling invisible, about finally being seen. She cried right there in front of everyone. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "You are so talented." The girl beamed. "This place made me feel smart for the first time." Daniel watched from across the room, and he understood. This was what winning looked like. Not trophies or grades or money.
This.
A few months later, Daniel's father showed up at the center. He didn't call ahead, just walked in during an evening session, wearing a suit that cost more than the center's monthly rent. Richard watched from the back as his son taught a group of teenagers about critical thinking. He saw the way they listened, the way they trusted him. After class, father and son stood outside under the streetlights. "I didn't think you'd come," Daniel said. "Neither did I," Richard admitted. His voice was different.
Softer.
"I was wrong about you. About her. About all of it."
"Yeah,
you were." They stood in silence for a moment. "I'm proud of you," Richard said quietly. "I should have said that a long time ago." Daniel nodded. "Thanks, Dad." They didn't hug. Not yet. But it was a start. Years passed. The center grew. Other centers opened in other cities, all named after teachers who'd been overlooked, cleaners who'd been brilliant, people who'd been invisible. Daniel kept teaching. Grace kept inspiring. And together, they built something that couldn't be measured in money or grades. They built hope. One evening, Daniel stood in front of a room full of students and said something he'd been thinking about for years. People talk about success like it's about winning, being the best, having the most. But I learned something from the wisest person I've ever met. Success isn't about being seen. It's about seeing others. He looked around the room. Some of the greatest people in the world are holding mops, working checkouts, cleaning offices while everyone walks past like they don't exist. But they exist. They matter. And if you can see them, really see them, your whole life changes. The students listened, silent and attentive. So go out there and look for the people everyone else ignores. Learn their names. Hear their stories. Because the person who saves your life might not be who you expect. They might be exactly who you've been walking past every single day. After class, a young boy came up to him. "Mr. Hayes, who is the person who saved you?" Daniel smiled. "Her name is Grace. And she's in the office right now, probably grading papers and drinking too much tea. You should go say hello." The boy ran off. Daniel stood there for a moment, alone in the quiet room, thinking about the boy he used to be. Empty, angry,
lost.
And then he thought about who he'd become. Not because of money, not because of his name, because someone saw him when everyone else looked away. And that, he realized, was the only victory that ever really mattered. The end. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the person who changes your life is right in front of you, just waiting to be seen.